What's up, guys? I'm excited to be here as we start a new series, The You Effect. So, we're going to dive right in. I am so looking forward to talking about the effect that you have on the world around you. All right, so how many of you, I want you to think for just a second. All right, think, no, don't say it out loud, but just think. Think about that friend that you have that made every situation better. Okay, they're just funny. You just have that friend that they were the life of your friendships and things like that. Without them, it just wasn't as good a time. I had this guy that I played football with. His name was Ramon. Okay, Ramon was hilarious, absolutely, positively hilarious. If you needed a laugh, you talked to Ramon, and it was just one of those things you didn't realize that how much better things were when he was there. Like his locker was like two or three lockers down, and dude just made it made going in after a rough day's practice so much better, just him being there. And I didn't think we had a bad time before he got there, but once he was there, it was better. And what's crazy is I don't know if he even realized the impact that he made on our lives. Like we could have the worst practice ever, and he comes in, he starts cutting jokes, and we're just laughing. We're forgetting how tired we are, and we're just being friends. And it was just amazing. Seeing what he was doing. And I'm guessing that you probably have a friend like that too. Somebody who has this huge effect on the people around them, whether they know it or not. Maybe you know somebody that is so fun to be around, that everybody really wants to hang out with them, is so nice that literally it makes everyone around them a nicer person. Or you know somebody that works so hard that their teammates work harder because of them. Okay, or maybe you know someone who's the opposite. Okay, you know somebody that's so mean that people always feel on edge around them, or someone who's so mad that they bring everyone's mood down just by being there, or someone who's so loud that you have to shout just to be heard over them, and in the whole room everything gets louder just because they're there. Whether it's a good thing or a not so good thing, here's what's true about nearly everybody that has a significant effect on the people around them. They don't really think about it, all right? They either don't realize they have an effect, or they haven't really put a lot of thought into how they could actually use that effect. That's what makes this series so interesting and tricky. For the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about the you effect, okay? How you affect the people and the situations around you. In other words, we're going to be talking about your influence, okay? For some of you, your influence is obvious. Maybe you hold some leadership positions at your church or your school, or you have friends that always want to talk to you. You're the person they always come to and listen to. And people take your opinion seriously, okay? Whether it's about something serious like whether or not they should date someone, or something as trivial as who is the best Avenger. It's Captain America, of course. But on the other hand, maybe you say, I don't affect or impact or influence anybody. All right. The me effect is zero. The only person I have influence over is the dog, and it doesn't always listen to me. Okay. If that's you, I understand it, but I don't think you realize the impact that you have. And we're going to get into that. People don't go away or do anything because of me. They don't question it, and you just feel like you're not an influencer. Either way, that's totally normal. And either way, the truth is that no matter what you think, or what you think about influence is even possible or even probable, we don't realize how much you affect, or the me effect that you actually have on the world around you. Now, we're going to look at someone who used what they had to affect others, even though they didn't have very much. All right, we're going to be looking in the Gospels. Again, which are the first four books of the New Testament. We're going to be looking in there. This is the story of the Bible, the second half of the Bible, where it's talking about Jesus' story and his church's story after he came through. So So that's where we are. Now, let's set the scene. Jesus is traveling around in his 3 years of ministry, and crowds followed him almost anywhere and everywhere he went. It could be because they heard about Jesus and they wanted healing. It could be because they were just curious. But for whatever reason, Jesus had a lot of influence and people were always surrounding him, okay? And on this particular day, it was no different than normal. This is John 6, starting in verse 1. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee. That is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs that he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for all these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. All right, and now imagine, if you will, a large crowd has gathered to see this great miracle worker, Jesus. And what does Jesus do? He asked one of his disciples, Philip, he said, what should we do? How are we going to feed him? And here's the deal. I kind of think if I was Philip, I'd be like, I don't know what you got. You're the miracle guy, not me. But instead, Philip responds in this way. He says this, Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each to have one bite." In other words, you've got to be killing me. There's no way that we can do this. I don't know if you've looked in our books, but the money's not there to do this. We can't do it. It's like me coming up to you guys and saying, okay, we need to run to Chick-fil-A and buy 5,000 number ones. Now, first off, the person at Chick-fil-A might fall over, okay? It's just, they might be done. They'd be like, you didn't call ahead? No. But again, crazy. And the story continues. It says, another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" So apparently only one mom decided to be responsible and pack their kids a lunch. Okay, one person. Hey, you're gonna go see Jesus. It's gonna be a long day. Take some lunch. Here you go. Share with somebody. No, who knows? There's only one person is prepared for this situation to be gone all day. But it was something, and that's when Jesus went to work. Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in the place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Okay, that's not counting their wives and their children. We know there were kids there because there was at least this one kid. All right, so I imagine there were more. But this is just 5,000 men, not counting the women and children. But that also tells you they didn't really count women and children. They didn't view them as, in that time period, they didn't view them as important. Okay, so they didn't really think to even count the kids and the women. Then Jesus took the loaves from the kid that wasn't important enough to be counted and gave thanks and distributed those to those that were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they all had enough to eat, he said to the disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." All right. Now, there are all kinds of questions we have after reading through that story. All right. Was this buffet style? Could they go back for more? What did they do? Where did the baskets come from? And how exactly did he turn 5 loaves and 2 fish into enough food to feed everybody? Okay. It's crazy. Now, again, all kinds of things. But here's maybe the most important question we could ask. who had the biggest impact in this passage? I mean, it's easy to say that Jesus had the most influence. I mean, he had lots of it. I mean, by the end of this account, a large crowd was calling him the prophet of the miracles because of the miracles that he performed. Now, and then there's the disciples who were there and they helped pass things out, whatever. That was big, important. They were impactful because they were associated with Jesus. But the real superstar of this story, okay, to me, the real superstar of the story is not who you would typically think, all right? The boy and his lunchbox. Now, again, at first, it seems like the opposite. How could a kid with bread and fish, his box lunch, be that influential? But the truth is, it wasn't the amount of what he brought. It's what he did with it that made the difference. He allowed it to be taken and used. It was his willingness to use what he had already had that made him influential. And this would have been an even bigger deal in the context that Jesus was living in. Remember, that they didn't value the women and the children enough to even count them. Okay? But here's somebody who we don't know his name. He wasn't anything special enough for them to even record his name. Okay? He's just a boy who had a lunch. And this boy who had a lunch impacted so much. His influence was so much. Just a small boy with a lunch. And all of this would have been, and all this was just a kid who just showed up and was willing to use what he had. Can you imagine the conversation that went on with his mom when he got home that afternoon or later? He said, there were thousands of people there, and they picked my lunch. Not even his mom could be ready to conceive the idea or imagine what just happened, but they did. And thousands of years later, we are telling this kid's story. All right. I bet this kid and everyone around this kid never thought the influence like this would be a part of his story. We're still talking about this kid thousands of years later. Even though it didn't matter that even though he didn't take the stage, he wasn't known, or we don't even know his name. He wasn't known or in a position of leadership. He wasn't a speaker or a preacher. He wasn't this super athletic or popular kid or super smart, whatever. I'm sure he was smart enough, whatever. But he wasn't even cool or interesting enough for the writers to write down his name, okay? Jesus wasn't looking for any of that. The only thing that mattered was that the boy brought all that he had. And it was enough, because ultimately this is about the power of Jesus and what Jesus is capable of doing through someone who's willing to be used to offer what they have, okay? And when it comes to you affecting the world around you, it's all about you being willing to show up and to offer what you already have, all right? Before that's possible, you have to recognize this. You have more effect than you think. You have more of an effect than you think on the world around you. Imagine this little boy listening to Jesus teach, if he had believed that he could have no effect on the situation. He wouldn't have gotten up and shared his lunch. Like, oh, I've got this. Everybody's hungry. Okay, If he just would have sat there, just sitting here eating his food, everybody else is going hungry. There wouldn't be a story. There would be nothing to tell. The same way, it was important that he brought what he had. When we feel like we have nothing to bring to the table, that we don't have any potential to affect anything, there are so many stories and opportunities that we are missing out on because of that. The way we see influence needs to change. It's time that we begin to realize that having influence and impact is really just be willing to do something with what you already have. No matter how big or small what you have is, it's being willing for it to be used. In other words, having an impact isn't about doing more or having more or knowing more people. It's about offering what you already have to those people around you. It's about choosing to believe even when it seems unbelievable that you can have effect on your friend group. It's unbelievable that you can have an effect on your section and band. It's unbelievable that you can have an effect on your teammates, or that you can have an effect on your siblings, or that you can have an effect on your classmates, when you just can't believe that. And then just imagine what God could do with the you effect in the world around you. Even if that feels impossible or it seems like you don't have a ton of effect right now, just allow your mind to consider the possibility that what Jesus did with this little boy's lunch is something that he can and wants to do with you, okay? And with your influence. And I want you to think about this. Here's a way to take it a step further. First thing we need to do is we need to identify the who. Who are the immediate people in front of you that you have the potential to influence? Who are the people that are closest to you? Maybe it's your siblings or a friend or a teammate or your classmates or your family or somebody. All right. Second, we need to identify what. Okay. What is the need? What is it that people around you need? Is it encouragement? Is it time? Is it someone to just listen to them? Someone to help them do their homework? Whatever it is, what's the need? And the third thing is we need to identify what you can do to help and then do it. Okay? Now, let's flip this a little bit. Before we change gears, I want you to think about one person in your life who affected you in a positive way. What was it about them that allowed them to have an impact on you? How did their influence impact your life for the good? In that same way that others had an effect on you, you have that same ability to have an effect on others. That's why we have small groups, by the way, because the more people you're around, they have an effect on you and you have an effect on them, maybe more than you think. Okay, the question we need to ask ourselves isn't, do I have the ability to impact others? Instead, we need to be asking, how will I use the influence that I already have? Ultimately, God is the one who has the power to change people. All you have to do is show up and offer what you already have and let God do the rest. He's got this. I love you guys. I can't wait to see you soon.